in the tiny village of Waldorf, Germany, in 1763, John Jacob Astor was an ambitious young man who emigrated to America when he was only 20. He came with little more than the clothes on his back and a dream of making a better life.
When Astor first arrived in New York, he spoke English with a very strong German accent. He was uneducated, I would say uncouth, but really dedicated to the idea of making a fortune.
A fellow traveler had told Astor that a man could get rich in the fur trade business. So that was the business he decided to pursue. In Astor's time, fur trading was a dangerous job. Traders traveled alone in uncharted wilderness. They went from one Indian tribe to another, offering cheap trinkets in exchange for animal pelts. Very quickly, young Astor would come to be known as a shrewd negotiator, though some say he used underhanded methods to get good deals.
His corporate policy, if you will, was to ply the Indians with liquor, get them as drunk as possible, take their furs off them for next to nothing, of course, then sell them on the East Coast, and make a substantial profit doing it, of course.
Astor's company was based in New York, the hub of a very active fur trade.
The market for furs was enormous in the early 19th century. You have to remember that people were living in cold houses, they were traveling in cold carriages, stagecoaches. They didn't have heaters. Fur robes are what kept them warm, fur coats, fur trim on their clothing. But the biggest demand for beaver pelt particularly were in top hats. Men's black top hats were made out of sheared beaver pelt, and they were worn by middle-class and wealthy men all over America.
With such a tremendous demand for furs, Astor's business flourished. And by 1800, the Astor Fur Company was one of the most profitable in the country. But for a man as ambitious as Astor, this was just the beginning. His grand plan was to set up a network of trading posts around the world.
He was one of the first American entrepreneurs to think in terms of a global empire, to think in terms of global trade.
In 1811, Astor established Astoria, the first trading post west of the Rockies, located in what is now Oregon. From Astoria, Astor exported furs to the Far East. He sent ships loaded with pelts to China, and they returned filled with tea, exotic spices, and precious silks.
It was an enormously lucrative trade. A person could send a boatload of skins to China and pay for the ship, pay for the cargo, and have enough money nearly to retire on, just on one voyage.
Astor was raking in money when the United States declared war on England, setting off the War of 1812. The British quickly gained control of Astoria, putting a halt to Astor's Far East trading business. But even in wartime, this shrewd businessman found a way to turn a profit. When the U.S. government made a $16 million bond offering to raise money to fight the British, Astor and two partners bought $10 million worth. Astor liked people to believe he did it for patriotic reasons, but his motive was more self-serving.
Astor was a man who's not going to do anything without a profit. That's his motivating force in his life. That's his genius. He knows where the profit is. So by taking on some of the U.S. war debt during the War of 1812, sure, he's there to be a good citizen, but he's in it for the money.
Astor and his partners made money all right. They sold the war bonds for a profit estimated as high as $2 million, a huge sum in those days. In the years following the war, Astor, who had a nose for making money, began seriously investing in Manhattan real estate. Buying land would prove so profitable that in 1834, 71-year-old Astor decided to sell his fur company and put everything into real estate.
When other people thought of New York, for example, as a prosperous village, he was thinking of New York as a major city, as the center of commerce in America, if not the Western world.
At the time, only the southern tip of Manhattan was developed. So Astor began buying large tracts of land between Greenwich Village and the Bronx.
He understands that if you get up there first and you buy up this now worthless farmland, then all you have to do is sit and wait. And he does. And lo and behold, the value of the land goes to the ceiling.
And as the value of his land rose, Astor didn't sell. Instead, he made a fortune leasing the land for higher rents.
And by the 1830s and 1840s, he's developed this perpetual money-making machine. And it just feeds on itself. The rents pay for the new land, which brings in the new rents.
By 1838, Astor was one of the largest private landowners in the city, a position that gave him tremendous power.
He has control over the real estate of the biggest boom town in America. There are thousands of people immigrating here. The population is doubling every 15 years. And who controls the rents? Who controls the property? It's Astor. He is a very powerful man.
Astor's success made him a prime target for charities, but as someone who had spent his life amassing money, he never parted with it easily.
One time, a group of people came to his office and asked for a donation to some worthy cause, and Astor rather grumpily wrote out a check for $50. And the men looked at it with some dismay and said, "But Mr. Astor, even your son William has given $100. And Astor said, "Oh well, William has a rich man for a father."
When he died in 1848, at the age of 84, John Jacob Astor, the German immigrant who had arrived in America with nothing, was by far the richest man in the country.
$100,000 made you very, very rich before the Civil War. And Astor left a fortune of at least $20 million. I mean, so he was the Bill Gates of his day. I mean, he was inconceivably rich.
In his will, Astor did make one major philanthropic bequest. He left $400,000 to build the New York Public Library. But the bulk of his fortune went to his son, William Backhouse Astor. A chip off the old block, William, who came to be known as the landlord of New York, would double the Astor fortune in his lifetime. John Jacob Astor was the first truly rich American, but industrialization would give rise to a new breed of tycoon who would amass even more money and power.